Hello, I'm Helen Good of the Elizabethan Star Chamber Project, and I'm here again with some of the wonderful and generous readers from the Beyond Shakespeare Company who have kindly agreed to read another case for us. And this one is from Lincolnshire, Carrington and Thompson, a sad tale of rival vicars. So, first I will ask our readers from the Beyond Shakespeare Company to introduce themselves. Richard Carrington of Swatton, clerk. A clerk here is a man in holy orders, and he is vicar of the town of Threckingham and is read by
Briony Sparrow, actor in Lincolnshire.
Reading Henry Thompson, another clerk, also quite possibly vicar of Threckingham, is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu and I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading John Bull of Barham, also in the county of Lincoln and also a clerk in holy orders, is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and already I find this hilarious for some reason.
Reading Simon Pepper of Ednam in the county of Lincoln, a yeoman and a blacksmith, is...
Kemp. I'm an actor and I'm based in London.
Reading the interrogatories put to the witnesses. So our interrogator is...
Hello, my name is Lynn Freitas. I'm a writing teacher. I live in the Northwestern United States.
Reading Humphrey Barlow of Threckingham in the county of Lincoln, a husbandman, is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott, based in Suffolk.
And I will read John Wilkinson of Swarby, a labourer. Good. Well, we start with some witness testimony, which is obtained by interrogatory and deposition. And it's always important to remember that the questions were prepared and submitted in advance before any answers were given. And they are read to the witnesses regardless of what that witness has previously said. Now, the first two to give evidence are Humphrey Barlow of Threckingham in the county of Lincoln, a husbandman of the age of 40 years, and John Wilkinson of Swarby, a labourer of the age of 31 years. Your witnesses are sworn. Lynn, put the first interrogatory.
Do you know the parties, plaintiff and defendants, yea or no?
I know all the parties, both plaintiffs and defendants.
I know the plaintiffs and the defendants.
Do you know the town of Threckingham in the county of Lincoln, yea or no? If yea, whether you, upon the 28th day of June, in the 39th year of the reign of the Queen's Majesty that now is, in the nighttime, before the rising of the sun or about the rising of the sun, hear the bells then hanging in the steeple of the church rung. Some other such matter, yea or no? And if yea, were they not rung in such a confused and disordered manner as you thought some scathe, fire, or some other such matter of danger or tumult had happened in said town of Threckingham, yea or no?
I know the town of Threckingham, and at that time I heard the bells of Threckingham ring in such a disordered sort as I thought there had been some scathe, fire, or some other hurt happened in the town.
I know the town of Threckingham, and on the Tuesday after Midsummer Day in the 39th year of Her Majesty's reign, I did hear the bells in Threckingham ringing early in the morning, about sunrising, but not rung in any confused manner.
Upon the said sudden hearing of the bells rung in such disordered manner, did you call to you some other neighbors of said town and repair to the chancel door of the church, yea or no? And upon your coming upon the door locked, yea, was the door locked, yea or no? Had not the lock then set upon the door been lately set thereon, and an old lock taken off, yea or no? And if yea, by whom or by whose appointment was the new lock set upon the door and the old lock taken away, to your knowledge, or as you have credibly heard?
Hearing the bells ring, I, with John Brackenbury, at his request, did go to the church to see who were then ringing. And our coming, we found the great doors of the church barred, and the chancel door locked, and the old lock on the said chancel door was then taken off and a new one set on.
Upon the ringing of the bells, I called some of my neighbours in the town and went to the chancel door of the church and found it locked, and a new lock set on, and the old lock taken off. I think it was done by the appointment of Henry Thompson, because he had a key to the new lock.
Upon your coming to the church and looking through the windows, did you not see the defendants ringing the bells, yea or no? And if yea, did you see others in your company come unto the chancel door, the other doors of the church being fast locked and barred against you? You procured the doors to be opened, and upon your entering into the church, found you the defendants there, yea or no? And had they, any of them, barred the doors, set on the locks? And was not the chancel door locked on the inside, and was not a bolt lock, and was it a bolt lock or a spring lock? And were the south doors of the church barred on the inside, yea or no? And are they not the usual doors by which parishioners resort to the church to hear prayers at times appointed?
I did not look in at the church windows, but I and others that were then in company with me did knock at the church door and chancel door, which being fast barred and locked, and nobody answering, they broke open the chancel door and entered into the church, where we found the defendants ringing. And the church doors were barred, and the chancel door locked with a bolt lock, and they are the usual doors by which the parishioners do go into the said church to hear prayers at the time appointed.
I did look in at the windows of the church, but I and others in my company came to the doors of the church and chancel and called and knocked to have the doors opened, but nobody would come to open them. Whereupon the church wardens did break open the chancel door lock, and the old lock of the chancel door was taken off and a new lock set on. And further, the doors are the usual door which the parishioners do go into the church to hear prayers at times appointed.
After you had used means to enter into the church, did you, upon the 28th of June, find the defendants assembled in the church of Threckingham? And if yea, what sword or swords, rapier or rapiers, dagger or daggers, or other weapons as gavelocks, hammers, and chisels, and other instruments of iron and steel were found upon your coming into the church? Did you not find the lock which the defendants or some of them had lately broken off the church door, yea or no?
After we entered the church, we found the defendants there, and a sword, a dagger, a crabtree cudgel, a hammer, a nail prizer, and a hatchet, and the old lock broken off from the chancel door.
We found on the communion table a rapier and a dagger, a sword and a dagger, and the defendants had in the church with them 2 crabtree cudgels, 2 chisels, a prizer and a hatchet. And we found with the tools the old lock which was broken off from the chancel door.
Do you know, or have you credibly heard, that the defendants in riotous manner entered into the church of Threckingham on the 28th day of June, yea or no? And do you know, or have you credibly heard, that the defendant Pepper is a smith, yea or no? And that he came hither to break the old lock from the chancel door and to set on the new one, as you know or have heard?
I have heard that Pepper is a smith, but I can say no more otherwise than I've already said.
I too have heard Pepper is a smith, but I can say nothing about the rest.
By whose procurement, practice, privity, or appointment did the Henry Thompson or any other of his confederates in such riotous and unlawful matter enter into the church and ring the bells the said 28th of June, as you know or have credibly heard?
I cannot say.
I cannot say.
Of how many places or townships were these persons so assembled, and what profession, trade, or mysteries, when did they first meet there? And to whose house did they resort, or where did they stay before their said attempt done in the said church of Threckingham?
The defendants do dwell in 4 several towns, and Henry Thompson and John Bull are ministers. William Thompson is kin to the Henry Thompson. William Feame is a husbandman, and Pepper a smith. This is as I have heard, but further to this interrogatory, I cannot say other than I've already deposed.
I cannot say at all.
Of whom or by whose procurement had they their said gavelocks, chisels, weapons, or other instruments of steel and iron, which they had and used about the said attempt, as you know or have credibly heard?
I do not know.
I do not know either. Thank you. Now then, what is going on here? Eric.
Hey, you're the expert.
Well, I was just going to say that basically one of the vicars has entered the premises and locked the other one out by changing the locks. Yeah.
Briony?
Yeah, they've caused a bit of public disorder as well by ringing all the bells at the crack of dawn, presumably.
Well, it's midsummer, so I don't know what time dawn is in Lincolnshire.
Well, maybe not crack of dawn then.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a serious question.
4 o'clock in the morning, probably.
Yeah,
Oh, 4 in the morning, yeah.
yeah. Sorry, Elizabeth was first, then Alan.
I love the lists of weapons. I was like, do they need that many different things to get into the church and to remove that lock? And it seems to me that they were like expecting trouble with all these daggers and things that were on the communion table. And it also seems sort of sacrilegious as well to bring kind of those weapons into the house of God.
Yeah, doesn't it? Yeah.
Alan, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it struck me that the fact that if they parked the weapons anywhere other than on the communion table, it would be slightly less heinous. You know, to actually dump them on the altar does seem a bit weird. The other thing is that obviously legal practice in those days was somewhat different to what it is now, because the number of times the interrogator is saying, you know, give me your hearsay evidence, which would be probably immediately struck out by any modern court. I'm not sure when that change actually happened.
Yeah.
No, I mean, as you have credibly heard, is a reasonable question. Also, they've got no hesitation about leading the witness. Yeah. To me, what they're trying to prove is riot. So they met together in advance somewhere. They came from different places. They met by arrangement at somebody's house. They arrived at the church mob-handed, is what they're trying to say. And having got there armed, they then caused fear in the inhabitants. That's one of the things about a riot. It's got to put people in fear. So by the disordered ringing of the bells, it struck terror into the people. He's not having much luck in proving that, because one of them says, yes, it was disordered and I thought it was a fire. And the other says, well, no, but the bells were ringing. But obviously, whatever was happening, the church wardens didn't know about it because they were dragged from their beds and broke open the new lock.
Yeah. What's going on in there?
What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? All right, now we're now going to find out what is going on, because our next witnesses, we have got the evidence of John Bull of Barham in Lincolnshire, aged 42, Henry Thompson, aged 40, and both he and John Bull are ordained priests, or as they might say, ministers of God's word. And with them, the third witness is Simon Pepper, a blacksmith of Ednam, and he's aged 30. Lynn, our interrogator, off you go.
Did you, or any of you being accompanied or complicit with diverse other persons, upon or about the 28th day of June last past, being armed, furnished with swords, daggers, long pikes, staves, gavelocks, axes, hammers, chisels, and other instruments and tools of wood and iron, enter into the parish church of Threckingham in the county of Lincoln, yea or no? And if yea, what were the name or names of those persons that were present with you and did so enter, and at what time in the morning, whether before the rising of the sun, yea or no? And whether did you or any of you or any other of your knowledge, privity, or consent, and by your procurement, break open the chancel door of the parish church of Threckingham, aforesaid, being first locked, and one stock lock being thereupon fixed, did you or any of you break off and set on another lock upon the same chancel door?
I was appointed and authorized by the Bishop of Lincoln to give possession to Henry Thompson of the parish church and of the vicarage of Threckingham in the county of Lincoln by force of a grant thereof to him made from her majesty. I did thereupon repair with Henry Thompson and entered therein too quietly and did execute his said authority, touching the premises on the 28th day of June last past. And in the morning of the same day, around 6 or 7 of the clock, neither I nor to my knowledge Henry Thompson had then any weapon or weapons, neither to my knowledge had any other person or persons of our company then any weapons, instruments, or other tools, saving that the smith, Simon Pepper, had then the sword which he usually wore, being the Lord Willoughby's man. And other weapons than this I do not know that any person or persons in our company then or there had. And I deny that I or any other of my company, by my knowledge, privity, consent, or procurement, did at the time in the interrogatory mentioned, break open the chancel door of the parish church of Threckingham. But I say that Simon Pepper, by the appointment of Henry Thompson, did with a chisel and other tools fit for that purpose take off a lock, there being on the chancel door, and did put thereupon another. And more I know not certainly to depose to this interrogatory, saving that William Thompson was in the company with me at this time in the church. I know no more to depose further, saving that I think the tools or instruments were none of mine.
Request of Henry Thompson, clerk, I did accompany William Thompson, his kinsman, and John Bull, clerk, when they went to the church of Threckingham, at such time as John Bull was appointed by the Bishop of Lincoln to give him, Henry Thompson, possession of that church as vicar thereof, and the vicarage thereunto belonging. I had then swords and dagger that I usually wore, but whether any other of the persons then and there present had any weapon or weapons than these, I cannot certainly depose, saving that one William Fern had a cudgel or little walking staff at that time. And Henry Thompson, after such time as he had possession so given him of the church, did send one or another into the town of Threckingham to borrow tools to take off a lock from the chancel, which this deponent did do with those tools after the same came. But neither I, nor to my knowledge, any of that company did break open the chancel as is suggested, because there was a key that unlocked the door. And we all came to the Church of Threckingham on or about the 28th day of June last past, and about 6 o'clock in the morning of that day.
I, by force of presentment from Her Majesty, was presented and inducted in and to the Vicarage of Threckingham as aforesaid. Myself with John Bull, Simon Pepper, and William Thompson and William Theme had amongst us one little staff and a dagger, but no other weapon or armour, and did enter and take possession into and of the parish church of Threckingham aforesaid, according to the induction. And I, being so possessed and inducted, did send into the town of Threckingham and borrow certain tools and instruments to change and pull off the lock of the chancel door of that church, and did put a new lock thereupon. And we so did before the sun rising of the 28th of June, and I had possession delivered to me accordingly about 1 hour after sun rising of that day, and did ring the bells of the church about 1 hour after that. But to my knowledge, neither I nor any other at any time did break open the door of the chancel, as is supposed by the interrogatory.
What were the names and surnames and dwelling places of such person or persons that were privy or consenting to the entry of you or any of you, either into the said church or to the breaking open of said chancel door, or to the setting on of another lock upon the chancel door after you had so broken open the same?
I do not remember any other person or persons that were present in company with me at that time and place, other than I have deposed. But William Thompson and Henry Thompson and Simon Pepper do dwell in Ednam, in the county of Lincoln, and more than formerly I have said, cannot say, saving that I deny the contents of the interrogatory to be true for my part, or to my knowledge for the part of any other touching the supposed misconduct that is pretended in the interrogatory.
Henry Thompson and William Thompson and I do dwell at Ednam, and that the John Bull dwelleth at Barlow. And I know not certainly to depose to this interrogatory than formerly I have expressed.
The names of the persons that so accompanied me are such as are formerly named. One of them, that is John Bull, clerk, dwelleth in Barham, the other two in Ednam, where I dwell. The one of them is a smith, and the other a labourer. And William Fern dwelleth as well in the county of Lincoln, and helped to ring the bells.
Were those instruments, chisels, gavelocks, and other tools, or any of them that you or any of you or any other to your knowledge had or used in or about the same setting on or breaking of the same lock, were your own or any of yours? Yea or no?
I know not of any force used or committed by any person or persons, as is intended by the articles, or any of them of any other doings than formerly is expressed, and I deny the contents of the others for my part to be true otherwise than I have formerly said.
I do not know whose tools they were that I used in the pulling off and putting on of the locks, but I deny that they or any of them were mine.
If these two tools or instruments were not your own, nor any of yours, where, of whom, and when were the same borrowed? And who delivered or conveyed the same gavelocks, chisels, and other instruments, or any of them, to you or to any of you? And what reward did you or any of you give or promise to in any for fetching, lending of said tools and instruments? Express your knowledge herein truly.
Henry Thompson sent his man, the aforesaid William Thompson, for the tools and instruments, and I, after they were brought, finding them lying in the said church, did use them only for purposes formerly is said in my previous answers, nor to my knowledge any other use or purpose. Nor did I give anything for the fetching or lending of them to any person or persons.
As for the tools and instruments in the interrogatory mentioned, I sent my man to borrow them about 2 hours after sunrising of the foresaid 28th of June last, which I am to pay for, having bought them of such persons of whom the same were at that time borrowed. And I deny that I, or to my knowledge, that any other of my company did give or promise to any person or persons any money, reward, or other thing for fetching or lending of those tools or instruments, as is supposed by the said interrogatory.
We've got more questions about the tools now from our interrogator. No, we haven't. Shall we take a break? How are we doing? This is a completely different story.
And timing all seems to be a bit to cock, because
Yes.
we've had mention of sunrise, which we know would have been of the order of 4:30 in the morning. We've had mention of 6 a.m. and unspecified gaps of an hour or two later. If they're trying to work this on alibi evidence, I don't think it's going to work.
Briony.
There was a random line earlier. I'm trying to find it. I really liked about how they hadn't broken the lock because there was a key for it.
Yes.
But it was just the way they said it. Like, well, but we didn't because there was a key. But we know from other stuff that the lock has been changed by somebody. So yeah.
Yeah, I think they didn't break it, but we do know who did break it. The church wardens broke it when they found the new lock on it. They then broke in. So the breaking in was by the church wardens. I mean, we've got a different story here. What we've got here is a new vicar with full authority from both the Queen and the Bishop of Lincoln, arriving to be presented and inducted into his new parish. What time of day do you suppose such a ceremony usually takes place?
Or noon or matins, possibly.
Yeah.
Do you imagine the church wardens know about it in advance?
One would have hoped so.
Yeah, wouldn't they? Yeah.
I mean, it's all very well, but why are they doing it in the dark?
Yeah.
Why arrive at 4 o'clock in the morning? Alan.
I'm just wondering, is this part of the theological divide dispute, and that Carrington was possibly suspected of having more allegiance to the old church, although, I mean, in the 39th year of Elizabeth, we're pretty late in the reign, aren't we?
Yes, we are. We are in the late 1590s.
By which point I thought the theological disputes were by and large subsiding.
Well, no, I think that's the Good Friday Agreement you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, we've got the Civil War to come, which was a religious war. They're not divided, they're not, but I have absolutely no knowledge about either Carrington or Thompson. This is why what I want to happen when this YouTube goes up, I want somebody local to rush into the church and have a look at the vicar board and see who won and post it in the comments underneath the YouTube video. So anybody who is watching this who happens to be near Threckingham, if they would be kind enough to do that, then we will have at least some answer.
And if not, I'll have to take a day trip with my mother.
Well, it could be. I've tried Googling, but the Wikipedia doesn't run to a list of vicars of Threckingham.
How rude.
I know. It's obviously missed the point. Briony.
Is there any significance to the fact that we've got everybody's ages except Carrington?
Well, Carrington hasn't given evidence.
Yeah.
You get the age. What they say, not always, but what they frequently say is, who are you? What is your status or occupation? What is your age? This will distinguish you from the 15 other people in the village of the same name and surname. Alan.
Yeah, my point, and I take your point that the Civil War was a religious dispute in part, is that if this was happening in the 9th year of Elizabeth's reign, then the plausibility of this being a spat between those of from the Catholic fraternity, in other words, the Marian hangovers, against the more Protestant versions, the hangovers from the Edward period. But by the 39th year, I thought it had settled down to a greater extent.
Well, yes, you certainly would not expect rival vicars. I think rival vicars is something that you would definitely get during the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I mean, there are records of churches divided in half, with one side being preached at on one side of the partition, and the others being preached at on the other side.
Well, that was certainly the case in the church in Colchester, in which I was a choir boy umpty through years ago.
Yeah.
And the vicar's board there was highly bloody confused, because you got about 6 names at one point, all overlapping.
But I would not have, as you say, have expected it in the late 1590s. Eric.
Yeah, well, I was going to say was that what's interesting is that John Bull, who's sort of the figure of authority in the church at this point, because he's a bishop, is
no. He's not a bishop.
Sorry, no, he was appointed by the bishop. Sorry.
Yes.
He's the bishop's errand boy.
Yeah.
Or he claims to be the bishop's errand boy.
Yeah, he kind of goes, he basically denies knowing so much, but then agrees that, we changed the lock basically because we had to. It's sort of, his statement kind of contradicts itself a bit.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling is that if a new vicar arrives just before dawn and promptly changes the locks, then something is amiss. I mean, I'm not saying which side right is on, but there is a problem, I would say. Now, shall we go back to the interrogatories? Does everybody know where we are?
I think so.
Okay, go for it then, Lynn.
Did not you, or some of you, when you were locked in the church, ring the bells hanging in the steeple in disordered and confused manner, till such time as the constable, church wardens, and divers other inhabitants of Threckingham, being at rest in their beds, came amazed to the church, thinking there had been some houses on fire or some worse accident had chanced in the town? Yea or no?
I'm under the impression that we skipped a bit.
Yeah, we have.
Yes.
Oh,
I think
we were at after you or any of you had so entered into the church, I think.
okay. I skipped too far forward. Okay, ignore that. Okay. After you or any of you had so entered the church and broken the door of the chancel and taken off the lock and set thereupon another, whether you or any of you or any other of your privity and by your consent lock the chancel door again and bar all the rest of the church doors yourselves, being then in the church, keeping the possession of the church with strong hand, yea or no?
After I had executed my authority and that the lock of the chancel door was taken off and another put on, the chancel door was locked again, but not by me or by my appointment, direction, or consent. And I deny that I or any other by my means, privity, consent, or procurement did bar any parish church doors, or being then in the church, keeping possession of the church with a strong hand, as untruly is surmised. For I say that those doors were not shut and barred before my entrance into the church, but after my and my company's departure thence. Albeit I say that one of the doors was opened by my means at such time as I entered to execute my authority.
I found the church doors barred, and when I left them, after the time that possession was given, one of those doors had been opened and afterwards fastened again, and that the chancel door, where the new lock was put on, was not at any time after that or before that broken by me or any of my company. Neither was the possession of the church by that company kept by strong hand, unlawfully, as untruly is surmised.
After the aforesaid entry made into the said church, and after that the chancel door was opened and one lock taken off the same and another put on, I did lock the chancel door and bar all of the said church doors myself, I being then in the said church and keeping the possession thereof.
Did not you, or some of you, when you were locked in the church, ring the bells hanging in the steeple in disordered and confused manner, till such time as the constable, church wardens, and divers other inhabitants of Threckingham, being at rest in their beds, came amazed to the church, thinking there had been some houses on fire or some worse accident had chanced in the town, yea or no?
When Henry Thompson was, by force of presentation from Her Majesty, instituted as vicar unto the church and vicarage of Threckingham, being in possession, he did cause the bells of the church to be rung, but not in any confused or disordered manner, to my knowledge, or to the amazing or of any of the inhabitants there, as untruly is surmised.
The bells were not at any time rung by me, or unto my knowledge by any other, in any disordered or confused manner, during the time that I or my company continued in the church, or that day afterward, while I or any of us did abide there.
I caused some of my company, after possession was so had, to ring the bells of the church according to law, but not in any such confused or disorderly manner as is alleged.
Okay, well, we've probably had the discussion, Scooter. We've probably had the discussion that we would have had here. Is there anybody want anything to say before we move on to the bill of complaint? Lynn?
Yeah, so I can kind of see how we can explain some of the different reporting. Is it who says according to the law? So I guess there's a tradition or a rule that when a new vicar is installed, you ring the bells. And if this was taking place very early in the morning or the pre-dawn hours of a summer's day, you might wake up to the church bells ringing on a day in the middle of the week and think, oh God, I wonder what's wrong. Why are the church bells ringing? And later say, yeah, it seemed really, it sounded like the emergency bell to me. And other people just perceive it differently because you're being awakened out of a sound sleep. So yeah, I can see how just hearing the church bells ring would make you think, oh God, something must be wrong. And other people stop and listen and go, huh, that's weird. I think I'll go down to the church and see what's going on. If you see what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, ringing the bells was the fire alarm, also yeah. Flood. I don't know if Threckingham's in the floodplain. It probably is now if it wasn't then. Eric.
I'm guessing like the fact that they keep mentioning that one of them was kept the church by strong hand means sort of like that could be an accusation that was used against them as well, sort of. I mean, legally. I don't know what the law was at the time, but yeah.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a technical term, main fort. It's a direct translation from Norman French, I would imagine. It means that they're not, it takes it to a different level. It implies that they've seized the place and are holding it, not by right, but by might. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was a bit interested in whether, because Henry Thompson does admit to having procuring tools for the opening of the chancel door. I was kind of confused as to whether or not he had to pay for the borrowing or the obtaining of the tools, or he didn't have to pay.
Yeah, my impression is that it's one of the things about whether they came prepared, and I'm not entirely sure what what exactly is going on here, but the fact is he borrowed the tools. He sent his brother, who was also his servant, to borrow the tools, but he's now having to buy them from the owner. He hasn't paid for them yet, but he's now going to have to buy them, because presumably the owner is saying, hang on, by lending tools for what may turn out to be an illegal act, I may be in danger. So I think that may be what's going on there. Alan?
I'm just wondering whether in fact the tools have been seized as evidence, which is why he's now got to pay for them, because he can't actually return the loan.
It's possible that he hasn't been able to return them, that someone else has got them, but I really don't know. It would be interesting to know who came out on top here. That would be very fun, great fun. Is there anything else that we want to discuss before we move on to our friend Carrington's view of the entire episode? The sitting vicar. Alan?
I don't think I'd buy a used prayer book from any of this lot.
You mean you're not assuming that one of them is in the right?
Well, so far the defendants don't seem to be putting up much of a credible story.
Yeah,
they're all over the damn shop, and you know, there's obviously something rotten in the woodwork.
Eric? No, Eric,
I was just gesturing sort of dramatically in the background.
just not waving, but drowning. Emma?
I do like how John Bull keeps sort of casually mentioning that they had the Queen's backing. He's dropped it in a couple of times now, which could just kind of suggest that he's in a corner a little bit and he's using the power of the Queen to kind of help him.
Yeah, or he may just be saying, we're the good guys. Here's my, you haven't examined the truth. I mean, the only reason that I would have for being a bit dubious about John Bull is, why do it at this time of night? Why not arrive in the daylight? Why not get the church wardens on board? There's something going on. Let us find out what Richard Carrington has to say. Briony, have you girded your loins, taken a large gargle of water or something?
I have.
Richard Carrington, this is the point of view of the complainant. We've only heard his voice so far in the interrogatories, but here he's going to give his side of the story. It's nice and slowly so we can understand it.
To the Queen's most excellent Majesty, lamentably complaining, showeth unto your most excellent Majesty, your Majesty's true and faithful subject, Richard Carrington of Swatton, in your Majesty's county of Lincoln, clerk and vicar to the town of Threckingham, that whereas by the laws and statutes of this your Majesty's realm, it is specially provided against riotous and disordered assemblies and meeting together to do unlawful and desperate acts, and severe punishments by the same appointed to be inflicted upon the offenders therein, and that no person nor persons should dare by sudden outrages to put any of your subjects in terror or fear. So, if it may please your most excellent Majesty, that one Henry Thompson of Ednam, in your Majesty's said county of Lincoln, clerk, being a man much observed for incontinent life, unhonestly drawing to his lust the daughter of a gentleman with whom he sojourned, practising physic and surgery, not being thereunto in any sort licensed, in which his practice by his unskilfulness a lewd woman being with child, and would have covered her fault, taking medicines of him, for that end was delivered to the great peril of her life, and lost her burden. And the said Thompson did likewise of late, of mere malice and without any just cause, challenge the said Richard Carrington, clerk, now vicar of the parish of Threckingham, aforesaid being a man of the age of 80 years, and having but one leg to fight or combat with him for the said vicarage of Threckingham.
Can we just pause there and enjoy that?
So I am 60 years old and I have only one leg. And
Yep.
the
60
pirate
years old,
vicar of Threckingham.
and you have only one leg. And Thompson challenged you to a duel. And not only that, he's a backstreet abortionist.
Yeah, that's what I was like.
Yes, very naughty.
Hello,
man.
Lynn. You
Yeah,
seem
I was gonna
amazed.
say, and he's accusing his rival for the vicarship of practicing medicine without a license and just basically being a kind of reprobate. It's like, I wonder how much of this is true. Oh my, it's like modern day soap operas can like not even rival this craziness.
Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, now you know a bit more about your character.
Wow, I don't believe Carrington. I think Carrington has an axe to grind here. It's a defamation of character.
I don't see, I live in Lincolnshire, so I could believe all of this quite easily.
Okie dokie. Let us carry on with Richard Carrington's interesting narrative.
And the said Henry Thompson, to satisfy his former malice and to persist in his lewdness, combining himself with one John Bull of Jernam in the said county clerk, being a man divers times heretofore detected and indicted for hunting in parks and killing of deer, against whom the good behaviour hath been divers times granted, and is yet continued. Simon Pepper of Ednam, foresaid blacksmith to the same town, husbandman, and William Thompson of Ednam, aforesaid labourer, not having any regard for your Majesty's laws and statutes, as aforesaid, made and provided, nor fearing the penalties therein contained, the 28th day of June last past, in the night time, riotously and in most disordered manner themselves assembled together the next parish church of Threckingham, aforesaid being weaponed and having long pike staves, gavelocks of iron, hammers, chisels, and other instruments and engines, and being so unlawfully arrayed and assembled as aforesaid by cunning devices, did then and there with force enter in the chancel door of the said parish church of Threckingham in riotous and disordered manner, with the said gavelocks of iron, hammers, chisels, and other instruments, which they brought to that purpose, break open the same, being locked, and not therewith satisfied the more to terrify your majesty's subjects. Being then quietly resting in their beds in the said night time before the rising of the sun, did ring the bells there in such confused and disordered manner that your majesty's subjects, the inhabitants of the said town of Threckingham, being much amazed and affrighted with their sudden ringing, did forthwith in great fear, doubting the town had been on fire, did rise and repair to the said church, where they found the said malefactors and riotous persons persisting in their said enterprises, until that by the constable and others your majesty's officers and inhabitants of the said town, they were stayed your subjects, and others the said inhabitants, verily thinking that some great mischief of fire or some other worse accident had been happened.
Okay, so he takes a side swipe at John Bull, doesn't he?
Of Jernam, not.
Well, I think it maybe should be Barnum.
Barnum.
Barham, wasn't it? Yeah.
Barham,
I couldn't remember
yeah.
where it was it had mentioned before.
I think it probably should be Barham. I mean, the original does say Jernam, but there you go. He's a poacher, he's saying.
Got to the matter at hand at last.
Yes. But he does first take a side swipe at John Bull. Simon Pepper is obviously an irreproachable character.
He doesn't like
So
John
far.
Bull.
Just happens to, he's just along for the ride. Yeah, but yes, we've got to it. They broke in riotously, they rang the bells, they put the town in fear. Yeah. Elizabeth.
Deer that Bull is supposed to have been poaching belong to the crown?
Don't know. Probably not.
Because I would have thought at that time deer hunting was allowed and was commonplace.
Oh yes, I mean, most great people would have a deer park, but if it wasn't your deer park or you didn't have an invitation, you weren't supposed to take deer. He's been bound over to keep the peace.
Okay.
According to Carrington, a number of occasions for poaching. Shame on him. But I mean, the thing about Tudor, well, especially Elizabethan court cases, you throw the kitchen sink at the other side and hope some of it sticks. It doesn't have to be relevant. Okay, yeah, as you say, we've got to the point. They broke in, they rang the bells. He doesn't mention whether he has any rights to be a vicar or not. Briony.
We have another time disparity as well, because he's describing it as before dawn.
Yeah, yeah.
In the night time.
Making it worse.
Yeah.
I certainly think it was earlier in the morning than one would expect. But whether it was in the dead of night or just before dawn, I don't know.
Never trust a vicar with one leg.
Come. You're supposed to be supporting this guy. You're supposed to be building. You're supposed to be. I always find myself investing heavily in any character I read, but you've taken again him. Okay, dokie. So what does he want? Richard Carrington. Now we come to the part where he asks for remedy.
Right. In tender consideration of which premises for as much as such riotous assemblies in the night time, and the riotous breaking into the church, which ought to be free from such disorders, and the said riotous and untimely ringing of the bells, whereby your subjects were put in fear, and matters directly against your majesty's laws and statutes of this your realm, and against the peace and good tranquillity thereof. And for that, the said causes are matters most fit to be heard and examined in your majesty's court of Star Chamber, where the said offenders may receive their condign punishment for the same, and to the end that offenders herein may not be animated to attempt the like. May it therefore please your majesty, of your accustomed clemency, unto your majesty's subjects, to award your highness a most gracious possession of subpoena to be directed forth of your majesty's said court of Star Chamber unto the said Henry Thompson, John Bull, Simon Pepper, and William Thompson, commanding them and every of them thereby, at a certain time and under a certain pain therein, to be limited personally to appear before your majesty and your highness council in your majesty's said court, then and there to answer the said premises, and further to be ordered for the same as to your majesty's said council shall seem good. And your majesty's said subjects, as in duty he is most bounden, shall duly pray for your majesty long and for your majesty's long and prosperous reign over us, your loving subjects.
Thank you. Well done. Gosh, this is a standard ending. I mean, the thing that interests me is that he has nowhere said, I am the rightful vicar, he is not the rightful vicar. All he is saying in this to the Queen is these people arrived in town, they broke into the church, they put the inhabitants in fear, you really ought not to put up with this sort of thing. He doesn't touch on the question of who is the rightful vicar at all. He completely ignores the problem, which to me is somewhat suggestive. Alan.
I think, as you were saying, a look at the Vicar's Board, if it exists at Threckingham, would be interesting to note how long Carrington had actually been in post, or had he only got one leg to stand on?
I've got nothing against your leg. Trouble is, neither of you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
Okay, Briony.
So what is he actually asking for at the end? Just for them to be in trouble?
Yes, he's asking for a writ of subpoena, which says, put in an answer, herein fail not, as you shall answer for it at your uttermost peril. They then have to put in an answer, a defense. And if Star Chamber clerks think it appropriate, witness, which they obviously did, witness statements, interrogatories and depositions will still take place. This has not yet arrived at Star Chamber. We're still in the early stages. Alan.
So these interrogatories would have been in Threckingham or possibly Lincoln?
More, very probably either Threckingham or some larger town nearby. What's the market town nearby? Is there one?
Probably Sleaford.
Yes, probably Sleaford. Yeah, that makes sense. So a GP in Sleaford would have been sent a commission and the sets of questions and told, make a record of these witnesses and send them back.
And the summons, the subpoena to appear in Star Chamber in Westminster would be at minimum inconvenient. to the defendants.
Yes, I mean, they wouldn't actually appear, they would put in an answer. I mean, the last thing Star Chamber wanted was hordes of discontented people turning up on their doorstep.
Oh, right.
What they wanted was an answer.
Oh, so Star Chamber basically worked from paper trail rather than from live evidence.
Yeah.
Right, that I hadn't fully understood.
Yes, I mean, if the thing got serious, or if the Attorney General got involved, then yes, people were required to put in an appearance, especially if they were going to be found to be on the wrong side of the law. But we're a long way from, interrogatories are a long way from that. They did as much as they could in the sticks, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very difficult to know how many cases the Star Chamber actually heard. They sat two afternoons a week during term time. And I think there are somewhere between 15 and 20,000 cases during the reign. Now, there's no way they could have heard them all. It's totally impossible. Elizabeth.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you say that, because I was thinking that this case just seems so petty. The last one we did was a little bit more, I feel like, substantial, but this just feels so petty. Is it because the Queen appointed the new vicar that Star Chamber is handling this case?
I don't think so. I think that, in fact, this case is in the wrong court. It needs to be in an ecclesiastical court, as I think someone may say later on. But if you think about the man who'd been slipped a love potion in Lancashire, were you here for that one?
I think that was the first one.
Yeah, that was so petty, it wasn't true. I mean, it was ridiculously petty. He was a stalker who'd been beaten up by the woman he was stalking's friends and relations. And he said, the only reason I was doing it was because they gave me a love potion. I mean,
wow.
The thing was ridiculous. Anybody, Star Chamber was useful. If you wanted to make a nuisance of yourself to your neighbours, you took them to Star Chamber. Helen.
I'm just wondering, in fact, you've mentioned the possibility and that this probably should have actually been heard by the church courts. But given that Bull has actually said that he was acting on behalf of the bishop, whether Carrington had serious doubts that anything that went through the church courts, where the bishop would be probably regarded as being a more credible witness than anybody else, meant that he stood not a hope in hell of getting any real justice.
Yes, I mean, it's perfectly possible that Carrington is hanging on to the vicarage by the skin of his teeth and has decided that a quick Star Chamber petition is just the thing to slow things down. We need that vicar board. We need that vicar board. Right. Okay. So Henry Thompson, Clark, one of the defendants, to what he characterizes as the slanderous and railing bill of complaint. Off you go, Henry Thompson.
The said defendant saith that the bill of complaint against him and others therein named, exhibited, is most false and slanderous, not framed or devised by the said Carrington therein, named complainant, as this defendant is verily persuaded, but set forth and imagined by some other, who dareth presume to use the name of the said Richard Carrington, and of set purpose and will hath feigned the said Carrington herein complainant only to vex and trouble this defendant. what any use, case, or good ground of suit. And this default also, that as he taketh it, the said Carrington, being a minister, either will not or dareth not ascribe unto himself the name and title of the vicar of Threckingham, being thereunto never inducted, as he knoweth as his conscience that this defendant is. Neither is this defendant, as he is informed, bounden to make any answer at all unto the said bill contained nothing else but vile untruths and apparent slanders, as in and by the said bill of complaint are suggested and alleged, which said suggestions, if they were true, as they are not yet, were they not fit to be retained in this most honourable court, but examinable either at the common law or in the spiritual and ecclesiastical court. Nevertheless, if that by the order and course of his most honourable court, he, this defendant, shall be compelled to make any other answer, then for full and perfect answer to so much of their said malicious bill of complaint as any way concerneth him, this defendant he saith, that as to all and every the riots, routs, and other the misdemeanors therein mentioned, and most unjustly laid unto this defendant's charge in and by the said bill of complaint, he is there not thereof in any sort guilty. And as to the slanderous charging of the defendant with incontinence of life, and unlawfully practicing of physic and surgery, this defendant saith, that indeed some envious person, having conceived an inveterate grudge and cankered malice against this defendant without any just cause, caused this defendant long since most wrongfully to be called into question for and about such lewd matters, but saith, for both the one and the other, the laws of the realm have clearly acquitted him with more credit, he hopeth, than hath redounded to such his adversaries as exercise their malice upon him. And whereas this defendant is so untruly charged with incontinency by the complainant, or in his name at the least wise, this defendant saith, that if the said Carrington himself hath done it, that he in modesty and for the ministry's sake might well have forborne such kind of slandering this defendant, as well for that the law hath discharged this defendant, as aforesaid, of such misdemeanors, as also for that the said Carrington is a man who, for his own lewd life and ungodly courses of long time led, hath been and daily is observed for incontinency, brawling, and quarrelling, noted and known to be a commoner disturber of his neighbours with unjust suits and frivolous actions, a man unlearned, a common alehouse haunter, and a frequenter of brothel houses and infamous places, together or with other undecent and unbeseeming pranks, not usually found amongst ministers.
Okay, I'm sorry. I've cut you off midstream, but I really think we need to enjoy that.
My God. Muck spreading in Lincolnshire obviously has a long tradition.
I mean,
Mudslinging.
what he's saying is there was a case at law about this using of physic and all the rest of it, and I was cleared. But if we're going to talk about incontinency, here is Richard Carrington. Yeah, Alan.
There's also the interesting assertion that it wasn't Carrington who was the prime mover in this, it was someone else behind him who was trying to stir it up for Thompson.
Yeah. He has an enemy who hath done
Or
this
several.
thing. Yeah. Any more for any more before we go on? Eric?
It sounds like sort of the stereotype of the like priests that you get in early modern plays where, you know, oh yeah, he goes out drinking and, you know, has the sort of, I'm trying to find another word for whoring, but I can't think of one. And sort of, you know, all that stuff. It sounds like the stereotype a lot.
We met one, didn't we, in a play where, and he sent his clerk who was to say the services.
Yeah, Musidorus.
Musidorus, yeah.
I think.
While he stayed in the ale.
No, sorry, misogynist. That's
misogynist. Yeah, Musidorus was something else altogether, wasn't it? Misogynist, yeah. Yeah, I mean, here they are. Who would live in Lincolnshire? But it is interesting, the two sides of obviously there is a furious row which has been going on for some years. I mean, this is not the beginning of it. Hey, I mean, it may be that in some other court records, King's Bench or something, I doubt I don't know if the Lincolnshire Quarter Sessions have survived, but certainly it's possible that some of this has made it into King's Bench or into the Court of Arches, because this is part of the Archdiocese of Canterbury, isn't it? There may even be a church court in Lincoln, but all things are possible. There may be other stuff elsewhere. What we need is a local historian. Good. Briony.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's a chance that Lincoln had something like that itself, because I know it's been a cathedral city for a lot of years, hasn't it? It's quite an old cathedral there.
Yes, I mean, the bishop will have had a court there, but the question is whether the records have survived, because that's always the problem. Okie dokie. Elizabeth, are you ready to pick up?
Yep.
Henry Thompson, I broke you off mid-flow.
Okay.
Right.
Without that this defendant did at any time challenge him, the said Richard Carrington, to fight or combat with him, the said Carrington, as in the said bill of complaint, is most falsely surmised. And without that also, that this defendant combineth himself with the said John Bull, Simon Pepper, and William Thompson in the bill named, did in contempt of Her Majesty's laws at any time, riotously and in disordered manner, assemble themselves together, and with unlawful weapons did with force enter the chancel door of the parish church of Threckingham, or broke open the same door, or rung the bells in the night season in confused and disordered manner, or in any other sort of manner, as might or did affright or amaze the inhabitants of the said town of Threckingham, as in and by the said bill of complaint, is most untruly surmised and alleged. And without that any other matter or thing in the said slanderous and vexatious bill of complaint combined any way concerning him, this defendant, material or effectual, to be answered unto confessed and avoided or demised, to the now knowledge of this defendant's is true in such sort, manner, and form as in the said bill of complaint is set forth and alleged. All which matters this defendant is and will be ready to aver, justify, maintained, and prove as this most honourable court shall award, and most humbly prayeth to be dismissed with his reasonable costs and charges by him in this behalf most wrongfully sustained.
Good man. I believe him. I believe every word he says. Shall we pass on to the joint and several answers of John Bull Clark and Simon Pepper, two of the defendants to the slanderous and most untrue bill of complaint of Richard Carrington Clark, complainant? Now, what's happened here is that there are two answers made. Thompson makes his own answer, and then John Bull and Simon Pepper join together in making one. So I've divided this single document into two bits and assigned them not quite arbitrarily to John Bull and Simon Pepper. John Bull starts.
The said defendants saying,
and either of them for himself severally saith,
that the bill of complaint against them and others exhibited under this most honorable court is not only most fake and scandalous, but also framed and imagined of malice and evil will of purpose to put them, these defendants, to unnecessary charges in the law and wrongful vexation without any just cause or ground of suit, and yet not devised by the complainant himself, as these defendants do verily persuade themselves.
because these defendants say that there hath never been any manner of dealing between them, these defendants, and the said Carrington, thereby to give either cause or colour of complaint against them, or either of them. Neither is the said Carrington, as these defendants conceive of him, so malicious as to plot or practice any such unjust and causeless vexation against these defendants, or either of them, who, to their remembrance, never offended him. But think rather that some other malicious person, which worketh underhand and will not be seen in the matter, doth only use or rather abuse the name of the said Richard Carrington in this behalf, who, for that he is a clergyman, these defendants nor either of them can or will be induced to wrong him so much as once to imagine that this unjust vexation of them and others, the defendants in the bill, likewise named, is the act of the said Carrington.
But if it fall out to be so proved, then these defendants further saying that they are much deceived and do hope that they shall and will discharge and acquit themselves of the slanderous untruths therein comprised, and most wrongfully laid to their several charges, who now credit then that the same Carrington shall gain thereby in the end. And for that, the whole matter in the bill mentioned, wherewith each of these two defendants are so undeservedly charged, it is so manifest false, they verily think, that these defendants are not bounden to make any answer thereunto.
Nevertheless, if that the orders of this most honourable court will compel them to make any further answer unto the said bill of complaint, then for full answer and perfect demonstration and setting forth of the truth to such points of the said bill of complaint as do any way concern them, these defendants, or either of them, they saith.
And first, John Bull, for his part, saith that as touching the riots, routs, and such like misdemeanors in the bill mentioned, and amongst other things in the bill contained, most slanderously and to his charge that he is not thereof in any sort guilty. But he, the said John Bull, doth not deny that it is true indeed that once he hath been indicted for hunting in parks and killing of deer, as in and by the said bill of complaint is alleged. But to say that he never himself, I never hunted in any pack or packs as the complainant in the bill named, nor in any such place or such manner perform as the common report is of the said Carrington. That is to say, in alehouses, brothel houses, and all other disordered and mischievous places, where if he fortuneth at any time to find out any bad, vile, or lewdly disposed persons or women, men and women, it is commonly said of him that of such he maketh his game and hunteth them with cup and can, and such other like alehouses and engines unbefitting a minister, which this defendant, scarcely knowing the man, will hard believe it. And this defendant also saith that for his own part and for his said hunting in parks and for his killing of deer, it is now long sith hence that he, this defendant, so offended. And for the same, his said offence saith that he hath been brought to his answer, and that the laws of this land have clearly acquitted and discharged him thereof, and that therefore he might not now be called into question again for these matters, being not examinable in this honourable court. As to that, the complainant chargeth him, this defendant, to be a man that hath been bound to the good behaviour that this defendant confesseth to be true also, and saith that the cause why he, this defendant, was bound to the good behavior was not for any misbehavior, but only for that he, said Henry Thompson, one other of the defendants in the bill named, being lawfully presented by the Queen's most excellent majesty that now is unto the vicarage of Threckingham in the bill mentioned, as was to have been thereunto lawfully and rightfully inducted, according to the tenor of the said presentation and special choice of him, this defendant, being his very friend, to induct him with this defendant, performing accordingly as well and lawfully he is persuaded he might. He, this defendant, was by the complainant's friends, as now he perceiveth, bound to the good behavior for so doing, which the complainant's said friends, if they had but looked into his very own bad behavior, might well enough have forborne to do, very well knowing this defendant's behavior to have been better at all times than the said complainant's, as he, this defendant, hopeth he shall be able to prove unto this most honourable court.
Can we pause a second, please, before Simon Pepper takes it up? What he's actually saying is, yes, I've been bound over to keep the peace, but that was as a result of this incident, and we were all bound over to keep the peace. Somehow this got before a magistrate who took bonds of them all to keep the peace, which is a fairly normal thing to do. If there's a row going on, the first thing you do is bind everybody to keep the peace, and then if anybody breaks that, they lose the money in the bond. So that's fairly normal. And he's also having some fun about ale houses. If he finds bad, vile, or lewdly disposed persons, men or women, he maketh his game and hunteth them with cup and can. Yes. And one on one leg. So this drunken lecture is also a one-legged drunken lecture. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but something's going on. I understand that Simon is finding, Eric is finding some very nice, good heavens. Yes, we'll at the end, we'll come back to what Eric's been finding online, other court cases concerning these wonderful people. Sorry, I shouldn't have gone there. Simon Pepper takes up the defence.
And the said Simon Pepper, one other of the defendants for his part, saith that of the misdemeanours in the bill mentioned, and thereby most slanderously laid to his charge, that he is not thereof, or of any of them guilty, either in such sort, manner, and form as the same are laid unto his charge, or in any other manner and form whatsoever, than that he, this defendant, saith that he was part and in company with the said Henry Thompson, John Bull, his correspondent, and William Thompson in the bill also named, when he, the said John Bull, went with the said Henry Thompson to induct him lawfully, as aforesaid, into the said church of Threckingham, and did it in quiet and peaceable manner, induct him and have possession of the said church unto the said Henry Thompson, present the very true lawful vicar thereof, and thereto lawfully presented by the Queen's Majesty, as aforesaid, for anything known to the defendant to the contrary.
And they most humbly pray to be dismissed out of this honorable court with their reasonable costs and charges by them most wrongfully sustained.
Thank you very much, everybody. That was heroic. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Don't believe any of the buggers.
Well, that I think is quite healthy.
Do we know what judgment came out of this, or is this another
No.
one where effectively this was effectively the end of the process?
The
I'm going to have to
verdict,
go and check the church, aren't I, to find out?
yes, you are. The verdict books for Star Chamber are lost. We only know the verdicts if there is a fine which appears in the Exchequer of Receipt, or if it is mentioned in a case book, or if there's a letter, or more importantly, if there is local knowledge in local records. Now, somewhere in maybe Lincoln, maybe Sleaford, maybe Threckingham itself, there will possibly be a clue, but it's equally possible that this is one of the unknowable ones. But I quite honestly don't go into Star Chamber for the verdicts. I go in for the incidental information that comes out, like, well, backstreet abortionists and what sort of accusations were being thrown around, and the incidentals, the fact that the church bells ringing in a disordered manner was a fire alarm. This sort of thing. Alan.
Yeah.
I mean, the disorderly ringing of church bells was a problem we used to have in my village, because one of the bells had been badly hung. And so rather than getting ding, 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 you got ding, 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 ding. because someone had got the lengths of the ropes wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
So if they were being rung by someone other than the normal tower crew, you've got a complete Horlicks.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think these people are the normal crew.
No.
I think these are the people he's brought in.
Yeah.
I mean, they did arrive mob-handed.
At stupid o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was 4 o'clock in the morning as part of it suggests, or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning, it's still ridiculous early.
Eric has very kindly turned up a tithe dispute at Swatton.
Apparently there were several. I just found another two from this clerk.
Well, the one that he's put the reference up is a chancery case. I can tell that from the reference. I love the way they say date between 1558 and 1603. I mean, it is, as you say, so incredibly helpful. I mean, that's the whole of Star Chamber Elizabeth has that in the I forget what they're calling their catalogue this week. Discovery, that's right.
Yeah.
Used to be called Procat.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, yes, here's another one. Yes, once again in, this is a better date, 1591 to 96. Another chancery case. So obviously there was a fair amount going on.
It wasn't that one of the accusations against Carrington was that he bothers people with petty suits.
Yes.
So that's kind of been proven if there's several.
Except that the first one that Eric found, he was the defendant.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, what I always say is the Elizabethans were irrepressibly litigious.
Aren't they?
litigation, I mean, they say for some people, litigation is their main hobby. It made lawyers rich.
So no change there then.
I was going to say nothing changed.
Well, yes, it's far more prevalent. I mean, this is a habit that went with, as with most Tudor things, to America.
Yeah.
And it's continued. Old men, you know, they give up sex and take up litigation.
Although I have also heard that a majority of the litigants in these civil suits in early modern England were women. The women were always taking each other to court as well.
Yes and no. Mainly no. I think that there were a lot of women litigants, but I would not say that the majority.
Okay.
Well, certainly not that I've seen. There are quite a lot of men going to law on behalf of their wives, especially over inheritances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife should have more of her father's money, kind of thing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Alan.
Reminding me a little of the current circuses that seem to run with Russian kleptocrats using the English courts for settling of disputes, which have got absolutely nothing to do with the UK at all.
Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. That I have heard happens, but I don't know anything about it.
Read Private Eye for the last 50 years that I've done, and there's almost invariably a story about it.
Yeah, I kind of given up Private Eye, but I probably ought to go back to it. Now then, leaving aside the modern problems, is there anything that anybody has anything further to say on this? Elizabeth.
I want to know the likelihood that Carrington would get his comeuppance for all the slander that he hurled, and how likely is it that we'll ever know if things were resolved between the two vicars?
I would say that, having seen these Chancery case references that Eric keeps on putting in chat, there is a good chance that we'll find out more. I would say that the best chance for the moment is the vicar board in the church. I will certainly put anything I find at the end of the YouTube video. You know, there's a comments section. So if anybody can put anything that they discover there, I too will put anything that I find out there. One of the things you have to get used to with these is that an awful lot of historical facts are unknowable. Yeah. It's very sad. The truth is not out there always. Alan.
It's gone.
Well, I'm not sure whether they existed at the time, but would there have been vestry minutes or something like that possibly for the church at that time? I'm not sure when.
Church, yes, the church warden's accounts and that sort of thing do exist for some churches. They will be in an archive. All the diocesan records or the subdeaconate or whatever, however they're divided, those records for this church, if they have survived, will be somewhere. In the East Riding of Yorkshire, only the very, very best churches have anything surviving from this period. You know, the very lucky churches or the very good ones, because they were being kept in the parish chest, which was subject to rodents, damp, all sorts of other problems. The paper wasn't always of the best quality. But sometimes, you know, they're there and they're excellent. Of course, a lot will depend here on who was writing it and who was leaning over his shoulder while he wrote it. And sometimes with these things, you know there has been a major row and a political decision has obviously been taken not to talk about it.
Or not to record it.
Not to record it. Yeah, they just sweep straight over it as if it never happened. Who'd be a historian? Yeah, Eric.
Surely though, like in this case, in theory, if you had like, I mean, since he claims to have a letter of induction or something, that would be proof that this situation had actually like happened, or like sort of, I don't know who would have won, but I mean, I'm guessing sort of.
This is why we need to know who the official record says is the vicar. Now that we should be able to discover
at some point,
either from in the Lincolnshire, the See of Lincolnshire records, or in the church itself. That, I mean, I've got there's the enormous church in Hull, which is now called a minster, which is nonsense. But Holy Trinity in Hull acquired sometime a new vicar, guy by the name of Fugel, who was difficult to say the least. We don't have any record of his ordination or his induction. He just appears as if by magic. And that is, I mean, all sorts of historians, because he does cause a great deal of trouble and litigation, but that people have always noted, we don't know where he's from. We don't know who he is. I mean, I've even sent someone out, they failed me, to look at foreign universities, specifically Pavia, because I have a feeling he was ordained abroad. Anyway, it's interesting. I've actually, he's one of the cases that I've got in my back pocket for later, because he has a fun time. Okay, Alan.
First, I just want to say thank you ever so much for finding and transcribing and preparing this for us, Helen, because it's been a fascinating exercise in looking at how people were using the law or misusing the law as a way of spreading as much muck as possible in the path of anything. As I said before, I wouldn't buy a used prayer book from any of this lot. You know, and I'm afraid John Bull comes out to me almost worst of the lot, because supposedly for the bishop's representative, he does seem to have an awful lot of rather dark patches in his backstory, which he even admits to.
Yes, when he was a young man, he did a bit of poaching. But it's dealt with. It's in the past. Oh, I don't know. I think you're being a bit hard on him. What I want to know is why they were doing this all in the dark and why the church wardens didn't know about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Otherwise, I would say 3 cheers for Thompson. Anyway, I think that's probably as much as we can wring out of it. I will keep you updated if and when we find more. And the chat is going to be preserved, so I'll have those references that Eric's found. Good. Well, thank you enormously for doing that for me. I know Alan says he's enjoyed it, and the rest of you seem to have enjoyed it too. But I can assure you it is absolutely great for me to have something that I can wave at the local historians of Lincolnshire and say, come and get it. Fresh meat. Anyway.
I'm currently composing an email to my friend, just like, here's a copy of it so you can have a look at it. This is some of the stuff that we've said about it. Let me know what you think. So hopefully I can tempt him. He's just one of these people, he takes on everything and is always busy. So
Okay.
I'll keep working on him.
Yeah.
Well, let us bring this to an end, and everybody, thank you very much again, and goodbye.
You.